Welcome back to the Tracy Take. I'm Tyler here with my brother Ryan, and today we are breaking down the 2024 off-season of the Super Bowl champs Kansas City Chiefs. We're going to break down their departures, acquisitions, review their draft picks, and at the very end of the video, we're going to break down their schedule and give our record prediction for the Chiefs this season. It's going to be a lot of fun, so be sure to stay tuned for the entire video. But before we get into it, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and also tackle that bell to get notified when new videos come out. We have videos coming out every Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern time. And then when the season starts, we're going to have weekly prediction videos for all of the Chiefs games that you're not going to want to miss. So subscribe to the channel and tackle that bell. And Ryan, thanks for pulling up the stats here. So these are the stats of the 2023 Kansas City Chiefs team stats from Pro Football Reference. And just initially looking at it, one of the top teams, obviously, statistically. I want to cut down. I want to improve those turnover numbers, but I also think, too, with the way that the Chiefs play, that they're just going to be slinging it around a decent bit. But obviously, top 10 overall total yards, one of the top passing teams. I think rushing as well is maybe a little bit underrated. Just I think with how elusive Patrick Mahomes can be, I think he's so elusive where like he's able to get guys open, but he also could have easily just run the ball even more just with the scrambling capabilities. Maybe can improve a little bit on just more traditional running, but I'm being very picky. In general, still one of the top offenses last year with very little support in the receiving room. Defensive side as well, I think they had one of the best defenses in the leagues. Obviously, as you can tell, in total yards allowed, pass defense I think was great. Chris Jones had an absolutely amazing season and deserves every single penny of the extension that he got. I want to throw it over to you as the team that had the former dynasty. What do you think of this team now that has the current dynasty?
Yeah, and I think what the Chiefs proved last year was that no matter really what is going on, as long as they have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, they have a chance. And my biggest thing is I think all throughout the year we saw struggles and woes on this offense, specifically in that wide receiver room. Just Kadarius Toney, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who was the kid? Mecole Hardman with drops. Like just all throughout. And Travis Kelce struggled with injuries. The offense got off to a slow start. So all in all, it was just a up and down season, I think, for the offense. I actually am a little surprised. I thought the offense would be a little closer to average than they really were. But I think the passing statistics really kind of carried that up there. And Patrick Mahomes is one of the best at avoiding sacks and not allowing negative plays in his offense. So I think that is also a big contributor to why this offense was able to rank as high as it was. And then also looking at this defense, I mean, they were very good. They had two, I believe, one All-Pro and two Pro Bowl corners in L'Jarius Sneed and Trent McDuffie. Like very, very solid. This linebacking group with Nick Bolton and Willie Gay Jr. was pretty solid when they were both healthy. Chris Jones had a really solid season. George Karlaftis has really come on as well. So they did a really good job defensively. And if it was not for this defense last year, they would not have come close to winning a Super Bowl, in my opinion. So,
I agree with that, because what's really scary about this is probably I think he has 3 Super Bowls now, Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, and of the 3, and even of the Super Bowl playing teams, this is by far probably the worst team. I would say, at minimum, the worst offense. I think that he's been on, which is scary to think, because then if this defense, which is very young, and they did lose a couple of guys that we'll get to here in a second, but if the defense keeps improving, they can keep building around Chris Jones as well, and then he can still keep putting up those numbers. The defense is still going to be top 5, top 10 defense, I feel. And this offense, I think, is only going to get more consistent and even more dangerous. So it's like, I think if they were going to go for the three-peat, which they're obviously going to try to now, last year was going to be their hardest year. I think it's going to be easier on paper because they're going to have more talented roster, in my opinion, than they did last year. So it's going to be interesting to see. Let's start to break down some of the guys that left, starting with one of the guys that you just mentioned, L'Jarius Sneed, as well. He ended up, I think got traded to Tennessee, right? Yeah, because he didn't want to be there anymore. And so moved on from him, Willie Gay, Mike Edwards. Moved on from Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Tommy Townsend, punter. That's actually, we're going to talk about punters the most, I think, than we did on all of the previous offseason recaps, just because I got an interesting opinion on the guy who they signed. But Nick Algretti and then LaMichael Perrin as well here. A couple other free agents, and I think they can absolutely re-sign some of these guys, like Donovan Smith, Jerick McKinnon. I think are two guys that they could potentially re-sign, seeing how training camp goes. And I think they get them for very cheap if they need more depth, especially to Jerick McKinnon in that backfield as well. And then a couple other guys too that I think are whatever, like maybe more depth pieces. But when you look at this list, actually, I'll say it's probably pretty obvious. L'Jarius Sneed is going to be the biggest miss. I would say of this team. But also too, if he didn't want to be in Kansas City, I could see it fine for him moving on from him. What type of impact do you think that's going to have for this Kansas City team?
That's a big impact, in my opinion, because on the back end of that defense, they were able to kind of mix and match with the two corners of who's going to get which matchup. And I think now you look at some of the other teams in the AFC, like let's take Houston, for example. All right, Trent McDuffie is going to take Nico Collins now. I don't like the size matchup there because Trent McDuffie is slightly undersized at 5'11", I believe. And you still have now Stephon Diggs, Dalton Schultz as well in the tight end slot. So I think that's like a pretty big – and Tank Dell as well. Like that's a pretty big loss there because now I would feel much more comfortable with L'Jarius Sneed on the other side. They did make a big push to re-sign Chris Jones to an extension, but they were top 5 in overall cap space this offseason going into it. Like they had the money, I think, to make multiple moves. And that is why, like, I still think the Chiefs are a Super Bowl contender, but as we go on throughout this video, I have a slightly more negative tone on the Chiefs because I don't think that they really made a lot of the improvements that they needed to potentially go and three-peat when you look at some of the other teams in the AFC. And I think it starts with these departures. That I didn't really feel that they needed to let these guys go because they were young stars, really. Willie Gay was a really good linebacker. I wouldn't necessarily call him a star. Mike Edwards gave them some valuable snaps as well. So like I don't. That's where I get lost on some of the moves that they made this offseason.
Well, and we'll talk more about it here later on as we get to the depth charts and then even schedule. But I will say I think the Chiefs actually draft decently well. Like I think they've found some good finds. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, for just as a couple examples as well. So I think they're expecting some of these guys to come up. But even, for example, Isaiah Pacheco, I think a 7th-round guy, and he's one of the, I would say, an above-average back in the league. I would say top 16 starting running backs in the league at minimum. And so I think that'll be very interesting. I think then, too, kind of to your point, though, like let's move on to the free agent signings, is they end up getting Carson Wentz as a backup, which I like that still because I think he can, if something happens to Mahomes, he sold a lot of firepower. And then St. Louis Reese Zement, he's going to be a special teams guy. That'll be unique. Hollywood Brown, I think, is probably going to be their biggest signing overall. We'll get to him here in a second. Irv Smith as well. And then the punter, Matt Ariza. And this is what I'll just address this real quick. I think Matt Ariza is one of the best punters I think I've ever seen. He was the YouTube famous guy from San Diego State who got drafted by Buffalo, but then they cut him shortly after just because of some false accusations of him. And this dude, if he still has the leg, I mean, he hasn't kicked in a couple of years, but imagine this team, though, how good this offense is, because this guy can literally flip the field. I mean, in college, he had multiple 80-yard punts. I mean, 80-yard punts of like in the air. Like he's kicking from the end zone and lands at the 15 or the 10 of the other side. You go check out some of his highlights. So that ability, like that secret weapon now to have on this team, I think is going to be huge. All thanks to just some false accusations. And so, but I want to throw it over to you though, because you're a big receiver guy. What does Hollywood Brown bring to this offense?
So he does bring a level of explosiveness that that they do need. He is a slightly more consistent receiver in terms of being able to catch the football than what they've had. However, I think if you look at his career, he struggled with injuries. He struggled with drops at times. He is a good route runner. Again, he's just a undersized wide receiver that is going to create some separation. He hasn't had the most success. He hasn't quite lived up to his draft hype nearly as much as people have said. They got him on a discount, and I do think he is a talented wide receiver. He's definitely an upgrade over MVS in that aspect. It's just I don't know if it's like they're signing a former first round wide receiver, but he's not the talent of what a first round wide receiver should be. And I'll actually even I'll go into the Xavier Worthy pick, and I'll probably get more hate for this take. I was not that big of a fan of Xavier Worthy. I think you look at what the Chiefs struggled with last year with Kadarius Toney, and he was super explosive, very, very quick, struggled with drops, struggled with route concepts, and running more complex routes. And I think that's exactly what Xavier Worthy struggled with at Texas. He didn't necessarily run a complex route tree. He did at times run some really good routes, but at other times looked lazy in and out of his breaks. Struggled a lot with drops. 165 pounds. What was his?
Well, that's the same weight as Devontae Smith, though. I mean, that was the same thing they were saying about Devontae Smith coming out.
But Devontae Smith is a much better receiver. He's much better at avoiding contact. Where at sometimes Xavier Worthy is not that.
I understand.
Like he can be a little reckless. And he's also not. He's lighter and a little shorter than Devontae Smith as well. Devontae Smith, I believe, is like 5'11" or 6 foot. So, I guess he is 5'11", 165. So that is a little bit there. I still don't love those two wide receiver additions. I just think they're trying to recreate what they had with Tyreek Hill instead of realizing that they just got lucky with a special player late in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, maybe so. We'll have to wait and see. I did hear it. I need to, in the comments, correct me if I'm wrong, but I did hear Xavier Worthy, especially the year that he had a lot of the drops, which was not the prior year, but the year before. He was dealing with a broken hand, so that might have had some effect to it. So, but correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's something he could maybe get a little bit better, more consistent at. I think too, there's a difference from a sophomore and junior Quinn Ewers throwing you the ball than Patrick Mahomes, which is going to be much more accurate. And so
I agree fully.
Maybe that plays part of it as he matures. The thing to me when I look at this, and I don't mean this as a pun, I mean this legitimate, but I see a lot of speed in that receiving room, and with Rashee Rice, Hollywood Brown, and then Xavier Worthy. And so that's where I think when you combine that then with Travis Kelce, I think, and an Andy Reid offense, I can see a lot of opportunities of guys just getting open just because of just a great play design.
Yeah,
that makes sense. So making it pretty easy for Patrick Mahomes to open things up too. Because imagine too, it's like you have these three receivers, Travis Kelce lined up as an inline tight end or in a slot, and then you have Patrick Mahomes and Isaiah Pacheco in the backfield. That's a really tough matchup right there, just because there's so much speed, they can really go in any direction. Are they the best receivers in the league? No, I agree with you there. But I think the sum of everything, and then with Patrick Mahomes leading the way, it's like I don't think you need a Devontae Adams to your Aaron Rodgers type. Patrick Mahomes is that great.
I agree, and I do see what they're going for, and I actually think they might be shifting to a more Miami Dolphins style approach, where they're going to try to turn more games into a track meet. And I understand it. The problem I have with that is, like, look at Miami's success late in seasons. And granted, Patrick Mahomes and Tua are totally different stratosphere in terms of quarterback. Yeah. But those Miami teams, they always struggled with injuries late in the year. They that offensive production really, really falls off when teams kind of are able to figure out what they're doing. And again, Andy Reid is also in a totally different stratosphere than Mike McDaniel. So I understand it. I just am hesitant to jump on board and be like, these are the greatest signings ever. Because I see, I see issues potentially arising.
I'm not saying that they're not. I think the biggest thing to me is they won the Super Bowl with, I think, a pretty agreed upon amongst the Chiefs nation with a subpar to significantly below average receiving room last year. And they did improve. If we go look at the starting receiving room from last year to this year, Rashee Rice does now have he now turned into that number one guy that they were wanting. Have to see what his suspension is going to be if he does end up getting a suspension. Admittedly, I haven't been fully following that as much lately since everything happened with him. But I'd take Marquise Brown over Kadarius Toney. I'd take Xavier Worthy over MVS or Mecole Hardman. The MVS, I think, might be more consistent. I think you have a lot more explosive play capability than MVS. And so I think already this receiving room is better. And they had one of the best offenses in the league last year. And it wasn't the best Chiefs offense that we know it can be. So that's where I didn't think they needed to go make a big splash in free agency to already then still be the number one. They're the number one team still, And if we go look at some of these other teams, Houston definitely got better in my opinion. So I think they're going to be much more formidable. But Baltimore, I think you can make an argument fell off a little bit with all the pieces that they lost. And so
specifically
for
Baltimore. For Baltimore specifically on the offensive line, I think Cincinnati, if they can stay healthy, should return to form. The Jets have that defense that gave Kansas City a lot of fits last year as well. That is largely the same. There are a lot of teams I think that could give Kansas City fits. But I guess the best way to put what my opinion is my biggest thing that I wanted for the Kansas City Chiefs this offseason was to get more consistent on the offensive side of the ball. And I don't really feel like the moves that they made did that. I even to continue moving on. Kingsley Suamataia was one of my favorite developmental tackles in this class, but he's a really good athlete. He needs a lot of work. He has very loose hands, very, very wide, allows defenders to get into his chest really easily. And when defenders get into his chest, he doesn't handle power that great. And so I'm very curious to see what he is able to do going forward with the Kansas City Chiefs if he's able to clean all that up and let his athleticism really shine. Again, it's just a consistency thing for this offense.
I think that's a great segue to the depth chart because I think we've already pretty much beat the head on the receiving room. But I think if we go then look at the offensive line, they drafted Wanya Morris last year, and they said the same things about Wanya Morris as well. Very athletic guy, but needs some work. He's slated right now to be the starting left tackle. Then they can do the exact same thing with Kingsley. I also think, too, potentially, if you really wanted to move him over to right tackle, if Jawan Taylor doesn't pan out or whenever that contract ends up, I need to go look at his contract. Lucas Niang has been a consistent swing tackle for the Chiefs, and so if they think Kingsley's going to be better as a starter, then you can move him over there. So there's some consistent developmental pieces. Joe Thuney, I mean, you're the Patriots fan. Do you like Joe Thuney or not?
Oh, I was pissed they let him go.
Oh, okay. So you like that Creed Humphrey?
Yeah.
From what I've heard,
he's a Pro Bowl interior offensive lineman. He's very solid.
So, and from what I've heard from Creed Humphrey, from Jason Kelsey talking about Creed Humphrey, is I think that Creed Humphrey is one of the better centers in the league. Trey Smith, I'll be completely honest, I'm not as familiar with Trey Smith. I think they got good pieces and they address the offensive line and their depth, as you can see here in their second string. So I'm curious to see how this offensive line is going to shake up, how Kingsley develops, how some of these other guys develops. But I think they're improving on that offensive line as well and getting better depth, getting younger, so they can also protect Patrick Mahomes, I think, longer. Travis Kelce's getting older, yes. They did end up signing Irv Smith Jr., bringing in a little bit more youth. Did sign Jared Wiley as well in the fourth round is there. So have to kind of just follow that overall development. Now, there's not going to be a starting tight end battle. That's not what I'm saying. But I think how the receiving room comes together, what some of the suspensions might be, because there's even a couple other players as well. I've been following Kansas City enough that have had some run-ins with the justice system. It seems like this offseason as well. If there's any other things that happen to the Chiefs, probably not. I think Rashee Rice is going to be the only one that's going to be a big thing. But once again, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, please. So I think just to your point, just how this offense can maybe get more consistent and a little more explosive. And to me, looking at this receiving room, I think there's clearer pathway, I think, to much more explosive capabilities than what they were last year. Last year, they felt really limited offensively, and they still won. And this year, I think I look at Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, Rashee Rice. I see a lot of potential with that team there as well. You got to stay healthy. Travis Kelce, as you mentioned, is getting older. He was banged up a little bit last year.
He'll be 37 this year.
He was drafted in 13. So if he was 22, maybe 30. Was he 24 when he got drafted? I guess he did. I think he did miss some time in college. I think that was that story. But either way, though, I get your points, but I don't think that they needed to go out and make big splashes. I think the guys that they brought in kind of fit what they're trying to do because Patrick Mahomes is that great that he elevates the talent and capabilities amongst all of his teammates, especially on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and that's I will go back again to what I said. Like one of the things I think this year really proved was as long as Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid are together, the Chiefs always have a chance to win the Super Bowl. It's very similar to me to Belichick Brady. Like as long as those together had a chance to go and win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And I don't think this situation is very different. I'm concerned about the consistency. Travis Kelce getting older showed some injury struggles last year. I think did he miss 4 games total? Let me know in the comments how many games he missed. But I know like the majority of them were at the beginning of the year. So let's move on though to the defensive depth chart. And really games. Not a whole lot of he missed 2 games?
Yeah, he just missed 2 games.
Just 2 games? Okay. Really not a whole lot of change on this like front 4. Mike Dana, Derek Nottie, Chris Jones, and George Karlaftis. All of those guys have been there. Rotational guys, Charles Omenihu, and then their first-round pick from 2023, Felix Enudike-Uzoma. Would love to see him make a bigger impact for them this year, but I think all in all, George Karlaftis had a good second year. Chris Jones is one of the best, if not the best, defensive interior lineman there. So to me, this is where things do start to get interesting. They still have Nick Bolton, but Drew Tranquil and Leo Chenal are going to be stepping up in bigger roles to replace Willie Gay Jr. And also Trent McDuffie, Justin Reed, Brian Cook, Nazee Johnson, and Shamari Connor are going to be the starters there in the secondary. They do have Jaden Hicks there slotted in as the backup strong safety. But I am really curious just to see what Steve Spagnuolo can draw up here. He still does have that top corner, and Justin Reed has also been good for this team. But with the loss of Mike Edwards and L'Jarius Sneed, what does this secondary look like? Can it be as effective as it was in 2023? Is my main question.
Yeah, I think it can be. I mean, even if you go look, Trent McDuffie's got 2 Super Bowl rings already. Same with Brian Cook as well, and Nazee Johnson. These were the same guys we were talking about as they were developing and talking about how young the secondary was when they won the Super Bowl a couple years ago. And then this defense played great last year to help them win a Super Bowl. So that's what I'm saying is, to me, when I look at this, I'm not sure how old Justin Reed or Drew Tranquil are, but I'm looking at the oldest guy being Chris Jones being their best player, and only just a bunch of youth who are seeing how great this guy is. And be like, I want to keep aspiring to this guy's level of performance as well. And just seeing him come in, and same thing with Patrick Mahomes. See these guys keep coming in day out. This is what it takes to be a Super Bowl champion. And these are literally all the things these young guys know. That's the only thing they know is being like Super Bowl champion, what's it's like to be in the Super Bowl. Some of them know what it's like to lose in the Super Bowl. And so I think that there's so much veteran experience here. And what's scary about it to me is, luckily I'm in the NFC, so I don't really have to see them that often, even though we are playing this year. So please go easy on us, Chiefs fans. Is just how much veteran experience there is on this super young defensive team. And so that's where I think they're only going to keep getting better. And with Steve Spagnuolo, is probably one of the best defensive coordinators in the league, especially with the work that he put in last year, putting in like that defensive numbers, how great that team was last year on the defensive side of the ball. I think this defense is only going to keep getting better, and I think he's going to absolutely come up with ways. Yes, you lose L'Jarius Sneed, you move on from Willie Gay, but Drew Tranquil and Leo Chenal. Both played in at least 8 games. Leo Chenal, I think, started in 8 games. Leo Chenal started in 10 games. They all played in nearly every single game last year. So they were a very consistent part of this defense. Not as much as Willie Gay, who started in 15 out of 16 games that he played in. But I think that they can go and replace that. And actually, too, also, let me even pull up their sack numbers here as well. Drew Tranquil and Leo Chenal had more sacks than Willie Gay. Both of those guys had 7.5 sacks. 7.5 sacks total between the two of them. So,
okay.
I think they're fine. I think losing L'Jarius Sneed, as you talked about, but I think there's going to be a bunch of other guys that can come up, young guys that I think that have proven themselves. And as I mentioned already, you go look up and down this defensive lineup. Only 2 guys projected starters as of right now that they signed from other teams. Everybody else they drafted. And even too, if you go back to the other offensive depth chart, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys on their starting list, on their starting one, are guys that they drafted. So I think that they trust that Chief system, the Chief way, and their development process. And so that's why I think guys are going to come in and develop. So you move on from L'Jarius Sneed, and hopefully you get a guy just as good as him for a lot cheaper.
Yeah, well, it's be hard. I think L'Jarius Sneed was a Pro Bowler. I can't remember if Trent McDuffie was the All-Pro or L'Jarius Sneed was the All-Pro, but definitely a Pro Bowl caliber corner. They don't grow on trees, so it will be interesting. I do think this will be another top defensive year for the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't really see that changing. The only way I could really see it changing is if something happens like to Chris Jones and they don't have that interior game wrecker. But I will say, if you take the top defensive player off of just about any defense in the league, that defense is going to regress significantly. So I feel like that's a little bit of an obvious thing there. So let's move on to their 2024 schedule. So in my opinion, a pretty tough first 3 games here. Hosting Baltimore in week 1, Thursday Night Football. Then they have Cincinnati, and then at Atlanta, and then at the Chargers, who I think it'll be interesting because we haven't really seen the Jim Harbaugh Chargers. The Chargers have had their number a little bit in the past, or they have at least had opportunities to win those games. And then New Orleans on Monday Night Football. And then they do have an early bye, which is not great for a team like the Chiefs, who definitely have late playoff aspirations.
Yeah, no, I'll get to that bye point here in a second because it's going to feed into everything. But I agree with you, though. It's like New Orleans is going to be the easiest game on that list because even though I know the Chargers are going through a whole rebuild, that's going to be a big game, especially for the Chargers team. It's going to be Jim Harbaugh's first game up against Andy Reid. And I think they're really going to want to come out and make a statement that they're in the right direction because the Chargers over the past couple of years, I think we all can agree, honestly, actually should have beat the Chiefs more often probably than they've lost. I think Brandon Staley's blown nearly every single game for the Chargers against the Chiefs. So not every game, that might be a little hyperbolic, but a vast majority of the games, like I think Brandon Staley was the X factor on if them are winning or not. So it's going to be a great matchup between Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes as well. Atlanta, that'll be a fun game, Sunday Night Football. Cincinnati, Baltimore, classic rivalries just between these all these AFC teams as well. So this is going to be fun. New Orleans on Monday Night Football. The reason why I think the bye is not going to be as big of a deal, because then if you look at the later part of their season, they have a lot of unique games. They're playing, so they have a short week on week 13. They are playing Friday, still a little bit better than Thursday Night Football. But then they get a little bit longer of a break, so then they play Sunday Night Football. And then they are then playing Saturday and then Wednesday, yes, but then they get a long break then. And week 17, week 16 and week 17, then they get a longer break than going into week 18 against Denver. So I think they kind of get multiple like little mini buys throughout the week, throughout the season. So I think having this early buy isn't as detrimental as it might normally be, especially then too with you having the week 16 game and week 17 game, because that Christmas Day game is on a Wednesday. So it's going to be very odd.
Yeah.
It's going to be great to see them play. But then essentially though, you are going to then be having like a mini bye as well, even a little bit better than a Thursday Night Football type game. So that's why I think the bye isn't as big of a deal. And I made a mistake here as well, putting in the schedule here.
It's at San Francisco.
At San Francisco.
And so, I saw it. I already looked it up.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. So that's going to be a big game as well. Then at Las Vegas, then host Tampa Bay on Monday Night Football. Denver, easy game. At Buffalo, at Carolina. And then Las Vegas on Friday, and the Chargers then on Sunday Night Football in Week 14. Easiest game's obviously going to be Week 7 against themselves. I think Kansas City's going to win that one. I'm just joking. San Francisco's going to be a great game. It's going to be a lot of fun. The easiest game to me, obviously, is going to be like the Denver-Carolina. I don't think those are going to be too big of challenges here. But every other game, though, is going to be playoff caliber type teams or teams with playoff aspirations. I know all teams have playoff aspirations, but you get what
maybe not quite the Chargers, but like I think the Chargers are in a weird situation. They have a franchise quarterback. They have a new head coach that's coming in who has been to Super Bowls before. So that is really kind of hard to predict. But I do look. They have a lot of competitive games. To me, it's funny. So like at San Francisco, at Las Vegas, and then hosting Tampa Bay. Those are 3 competitive games. But then it's kind of like easy game. Denver, hard game Buffalo, easy game Carolina, hard game Vegas, easy game Los Angeles, hard game at Cleveland, to kind of break it up into the final column here. So at Cleveland, then Houston is a tough game. Pittsburgh on Christmas is I don't want to say it's a hard game because I'm not high on Pittsburgh at all. However, playing on a Wednesday is extremely odd. And we see it all the time on Thursday Night Football. Those teams do not have enough time to prepare. They are just very much it comes down to who has better playmakers. And the one thing I will say about Pittsburgh, Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, George Pickens, like they have a good bit of Pat Freiermuth, like they have a good bit of playmakers. So like that could be a sneaky game that like could come up on the schedule, and then they have the long week into the Denver game. I think is a win. So
I will say that Pitt game it is a normal Thursday night game schedule for them because they play on Saturday.
That's and I agree. So, I just think from Sunday to Sunday, teams get in their routine, and granted, they're all over the place because they're probably the most
popular,
most wanted to be seen, team.
Yeah.
And so they don't necessarily have that like Sunday to Sunday schedule that most teams probably establish throughout the year. But I still think teams operate the best when, all right, game on Sunday, off Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday practice, Friday walkthrough, Saturday day off, Sunday game. When you don't have that routine, you're not operating at 100%.
Yeah. Now, and this schedule, though, it reminds me of a team that it reminds me of like your Patriots when they were in their dynasties. Like they had a lot of primetime games. They had a very unique schedule just because they played Thursdays on Sundays and Mondays multiple times, and so they had a lot of holiday games. And so I think they probably get used to the inconsistencies of everything and just know that it's just the way that it is. It's because everybody wants to beat them because they're on the top of the pedestal and they're the team to beat. And so I don't think it's going to be as big a deal just because we've seen them do this now the past couple of years now, or really since Patrick Mahomes has taken off and become the star that he is. They've had schedules like this. So it doesn't suck, yes, but I think they've mentally been through it plenty of times where I don't think it's going to be as big a deal. The thing to me is I think it's also too being a Super Bowl champion, you're just going to have a tough schedule as well. Playing the AFC North, playing the NFC South is honestly probably a little bit of a blessing because you got a couple of easy games in there, at least with like Carolina and New Orleans, in my opinion. New Orleans. So, but I think that kind of does segue into our record. And I know in this video, I've been the one that's been probably speaking higher of the Chiefs in general. I still feel like they're going to be around 11-6, 12-5. I think their schedule is very tough to where I believe that they're going to probably drop some games early on. I think in the latter half of that schedule, though, it's like when week 12 at Carolina, I could see them winning all those other games as well, just because that's normally when they start to pick up. But I could see them splitting some games early on. Like they lost at home last year to Detroit. I could see them potentially losing to Baltimore again. I'm probably going to pick the Chiefs in this game, but I could see them losing. It's week one, of a long season. You're still trying to figure some stuff out. Got a couple early games, tough early games going on. Even the middle part of the season as well has some tough games. So either way, though, I still think they're going to win the division. I still think they're going to be one of the top seeds. Home field advantage potentially. Possibly with your record, I think at 11-6, I think they might be a little less. It depends, though. The AFC North, there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to be beating each other. The AFC East, I think there's a lot of teams that are going to be beating each other. AFC South is probably actually the one that might be a little bit more definitive. I take that back, though. Actually, AFC South is on paper, there should be 3 or 4 good teams. That's 3 teams, I think, in there that could be vying for the division. So maybe 11-6 is the number 1 overall seed. But they're still going to win the division, in my opinion. even though with some tough matchups coming from the Raiders and the Chargers as well. So you're pick 12-5, even though you've been speaking, I would say, a little bit less positively throughout this. What kind of went into your decision there?
I don't necessarily feel that they will struggle as much in the regular season. So I had them go 4-1 through the first 6 weeks, 6-2 through the middle section of the schedule, and then 2-2 in the final 4 games. And I think that results in 12-5. I think this schedule is favorable in the sense of they have few to a good bit of games they will win, and then they have a few toss-ups. And so if you take out the games that I feel that they should win, they should beat the Chargers twice, in my opinion. They should beat New Orleans. They should beat Denver twice. Like, you actually look at their record against true playoff teams, I think I had it at 4-5, simply because I don't think that or not 4-5, 6-5. Sorry. I don't think that there are a lot of real playmakers on this team besides Patrick Mahomes. And I think once they get into the playoffs and they're facing Houston, they're facing Buffalo, that has had a full year to kind of build on this offense that they started at the end of last season. They're facing the Cincinnati's. They're getting the Cleveland's with maybe a healthy Deshaun Watson, who they do get in week 15 also. But I think that they will really start to struggle. And I think the style of play that they look like they're playing on paper is not cold weather football. And they're an outdoor team that is going to be most likely playing against other outdoor teams come late January. So
yeah,
that is my take. Is I think they have some easy games coupled with a few hard games, and then a couple games that are in the middle.
Yeah, no, they have a tougher schedule, yes, but it's also against a lot of. I mean, they're still the best. They're back-to-back Super Bowl champs, so they're going to find ways to win a lot of these games. Like, I'd be shocked if they happen to lose over half of like the close games. They went 9-8 or something like that, and barely squeaked in the playoffs. That would be crazy. I'm even thinking too, because our next series as well is going to be kind of like the expectations for the teams and what their floors and ceilings might be. Overall, and trying to be as unbiased as possible. And even too, I'm sitting here thinking as well, like, is 9-8 even a floor for them? Like, I just can't see them going like maybe 10-7 at the worst. I think their ceiling could be 14-3. And like the ceiling, I think we could debate more on, but like anything less than 10-7, like I don't think I would agree with. These are spoiler alerts as well. Go ahead and check out this video. Ring the bell to get notified when this video comes out. As Ryan and I will talk deeper about what their floor and ceiling might be.
Yeah, but that is, I think, like Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid set the floor at 10-7. Like, you could have taken the New England Patriots last year with all of their horrible offense, plugged in Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, and like that team, I think wins 10 or more games. And that was one of the worst offenses in the league last year. Actually, that was them in Denver. So like that to me, I think is where this team is. And part of the reason why I feel like maybe I'm so critical is, all right, you are this dynasty. Like, it is so hard to repeat it, that these small moves and like not taking advantage of having a top 5 amount of cap space is just ridiculous in my opinion. And that's where, and I know you got to bring back guys and extend guys and whatnot, but that's where like I get concerned, is like maybe they're getting a little ahead of themselves. And then you go look at the rest of the progress the AFC made this offseason, and I don't know, they stack up a lot closer now than they did last year, in my opinion.
Some of that, though, I think, to be fair though to the Chiefs, is I think other teams in the AFC are getting better. So,
I agree.
I think that's some of it. But either way, though, the Chiefs team is still, I think, the team to beat. There's no reason. I mean, like, I can see a lot of reasons to bet on some other teams, but I still think the betting odds should probably still be favorited on the Chiefs because, shoot, they've done it. And so, but in general, though, I think they're always fun to watch. I'm glad they're going to be on a lot of primetime games. Going to see the Falcons play them on primetime. That's going to be exciting and nerve-wracking and exciting. And so for me, just don't want to be embarrassed.
Yeah. Well, at least if it's a blowout, you're not stressed if they're going to lose in the last second or not. So,
yeah, it's true. Yeah, I've had worse losses. So,
but all right, let's go ahead and wrap this one up here. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below on what you thought of the Kansas City Chiefs offseason. Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you have done differently? And other than that, we will see you guys next time.